guess I'll start this off. Me and Josh wanted to just put something together, and there's a lot of guys out there that are, getting coaches and looking for coaches and stuff like that for powerlifting, and we just kind of wanted to put our heads together a little bit. Josh did his list, I did my list. We're kind of keeping each one in the dark on who's doing what. So just kind of bring out what we might think that, new lifters specifically, and even lifters that are more experienced and stuff. And, just anybody looking for a powerlifting coach, what you might need to ask or look for in a powerlifting coach. Josh?
We're doing our top 10?
Something like that.
All right. So my number 10, I put adaptability and being flexible. There's more than one way to get strong. And for whatever reason, if somebody doesn't buy into the way you're coaching them, even if on paper it's the best, it's not the best.
One thing that I will kind of mention on what Josh just said, because it just kind of came to my mind and stuff. And, I follow a lot of different people and just been involved in the sport for nearly 50 years. So I know that Ed Coan just was on the Facebook just within the last month saying that most lifters nowadays overtrain. And I think that's something to do with what Josh is talking about. You just have so many people come in and it's just like, I want hypertrophy, I want hypertrophy. And it's like, sometimes that's what you need to do. Sometimes that's not what you need to do. And that's kind of what I think Josh is going at that level. Is that what some of the stuff you're thinking about,
yeah,
Josh?
Partially that, but I think, even outside of that, like if you say, Josh, you need to bench 3 days a week, 5 sets of 3 or whatever. I'm just making up random.
Right.
And I just think that that's not the right way to do it, whatever. I mean, obviously that specific protocol is not the only way to get strong. I might be wanting to do more of conjugate, whatever. And if I'm just like, I know conjugate works, that's what I want to do. Like, even if you're not going to program conjugate, I think there's got to be, like, it can't be my way or the highway on every single detail. Like, I mean, to some degree, yes, but I think there's got to be at least a little bit of give and take with the coach and lifter, kind of meet them in the middle a little bit.
I believe in that. I think probably on my list is, that you should specifically ask a coach you're looking at is, what does your service include? So, I mean, because some people, they've got just one package, and it's everything. And some lifters don't really need everything. They might just want to have a meet prep. They might not want out of season training, or they might want all of it. So, I think it'd behoove you or anybody looking for a coach to kind of get into the guy and ask him, what can I get from you, and how in depth do you want to get with your coach, and being knowing too that is this coach familiar with training all level of lifters. So if you're a high level lifter or you're a novice lifter, he's worked with both. But knowing that just what his service is included, is it just one package, or has he got something set up for different kind of people that want different kind of, parts of the whatever you might get, just programming? Or are you going to go to the meet with them and be their coach at the meet, or are you going to go by yourself? Or, there's a lot of things that you really need to look for.
I think that's a good one. It's funny because my next one is actually going to cover sort of that concept, but kind of overlooked. So that was your number 10?
Yep.
All right. So I'll just say what my number 9 is.
Okay.
My number 9 is common sense. And as you're saying that, that's something that didn't even occur to me. Like, to me, that's just like, of course you're going to ask that.
And I think we're going to have more of those.
But
I really do.
But you're exactly right. That's not something people think about or even ask about. And then there's always like conflict when it's not what you thought. So it's funny. I wrote common sense, but some of the common sense ones I think I missed. Well, let's go back to yours though. So I do think that's a big one, because you got to be on the same page with your coach. Like, if I am expecting you to hold my hand for every single thing,
and some people want that.
Some people want that.
Some people have been around for a little while.
Right.
So.
And I'm expecting that, and you're like, I've coached 20 world champions. I don't do that. You're either on board or you're not. Okay, we are not on the same page. That's going to be a problem at some point. So with my common sense, I also put /safety. And I say that because I've seen a lot of people do a lot of dumb shit in the gym.
Yep.
I've seen a lot of coaches do a lot of dumb shit. I see a lot of, so I guess I'll add one thing to that too is, I guess, awareness maybe. I think a coach should always be taking in the whole thing, like in a gym, in a warm-up room, whatever it is, and looking for potential issues. You see a guy with 5 plates on each side, and he's on one side pulling all the weights off one side. Something's about to happen.
Yep, not good.
And you know, that, again, that kind of goes a little bit beyond necessarily that coach's job, but it's still a matter of, like, you want to keep everybody safe, but specifically your lifters. So if you got a lifter sitting, you know, or loading another bar on the other side and somebody's about to dump a bar on him, like, I'm always looking for those things, and I think it's important to have somebody that just kind of has some common sense. You know that bar is going to dump if there's 5 plates on one side, not the other. You know, if somebody's benching heavy in a shirt and they got the safeties all the way down and they got some scrawny dude lifting off, just put the fucking safeties up. Like, it's things like that I think coaches, lifters too, should always be, I guess, looking out for those things, because all it takes is one little fuck up and you're done.
Yep, that's it. And that's a common sense a lot. And just to reiterate, go back a little bit, we're working from the bottom up, right, Josh?
Yes. Yep.
So I don't know if we said that or not, but we're
Yep.
kind of starting at the bottom and working up to our number one. One of the ones that I would probably look for next, and sometimes too it depends on the lifters, because some lifters aren't looking for this, but I would specifically ask the person, had they ever coached on a national level? Because that in itself is kind of like a whole different level. And some people are in it for fun, and hey, that's awesome. You know, if an organization's got 20,000 members, 15,000 members, 10,000 members, you know, there's a small percentage of people that are really in those top 3 at nationals that are just trying to, you know, get there and trying to win and maybe go to Worlds or win a national championship, or, you know, whatever their goal is. But I think it's a good thing to kind of, you know, ask your coach, have you coached on a national level? And that kind of will give you some scope of where this guy maybe started from and where he's at now, or maybe where he's been for a long time. Josh.
Was that your number 9?
Yeah.
I already lost track of where we're
Okay,
at.
it's all
So,
good.
all right, number 8. One thing I think is important is, of course, you'll steal my pen.
Oh, sorry.
No, I'm good. I think one thing that's important is a coach needs to always have a desire to learn and to get better.
Oof, that's a good one.
Because I think a lot of coaches get to a certain point or have success with 1 or 2 lifters, and that becomes their blueprint for everybody. So this person did this and they won a national title, all my lifters are going to do this, they're all going to have the same technique, they're all going to squat the same way, and that's not how it works. And I think a lot of coaches can get complacent with that, and you know, you're either getting better or you're getting worse. I think things evolve, so like
And if you're standing still, you're getting worse.
Yeah, so like training methods have evolved, you know, recovery methods have evolved, and if you're like, well, this worked for me in the year 1990, everybody's going to do this, well, that still might be a very effective way, but there may be other aspects or little recovery methods or little tweaks, changes, things like that would actually make that better. But if you're too set in your ways to explore and pursue those, you're not keeping up with the times.
And some of the things that Josh mentioned right there is hypercritical in the fact of the way somebody's built. You know, do you think that somebody that's 5'2" with short arms and short legs is going to be trained like somebody that's 6'3" that's got long arms and long legs? Probably not, you know. So that something goes back to what Josh was saying about common sense too. You know, just because somebody's built, you know, a better squatter, you know, and, you know, his deadlift might not be as good, you know. You got to really know that each lifter maybe needs a little bit different training, and a lot of that's built around their weaknesses too. You know, I think me and Josh are pretty big proponents, we are specifically, about working people's weaknesses.
Yeah.
So, all right.
Yeah, I mean, it's like, the easiest analogy is a chain is only as strong as its weakest link. And if, you know, you keep developing the aspects that you're really strong at, neglecting the weak point, you're not really getting better at the overall lift. You're working certain aspects that are not your problem to begin with.
Yeah, and I'll kind of chime in on that just a little bit. You know, Josh is talking about the weakest link and this, that, and sometimes it's almost comical to me when people walk into the gym and they start asking you, do you have this type deadlift bar? Or do you have this type squat bar? Or do you have this brand of rack? Or you have this or have that? And it's like, I look at them and I just think in my mind is like, dude, how much abs have you done in the last week? You know, I mean, before we start talking about all this integral stuff that you think is so important to you, you know, and I am just blown away all the time how lifters and coaches don't have people do ab specific exercises if you're going to be a power lifter. I think it is absolutely ridiculous. So, and I think that's got a big part to do with, you know, what is important. And before you start getting to the point to where you're going to worlds, and it does matter if you're training on the exact same equipment. You know, I think that maybe when you get to that level, maybe you'd be more critical or more concerned about that. So
I have a point B to mine. So so the desire to learn and get better as a coach. So we're kind of talking about the programming, like the actual hands-on coaching side of it. But I even want to break that down into, let's say I'm really good at writing programs, but I suck at communicating it and explaining it to somebody. So I hang my hat on the fact that I know I write good programs, just do it, instead of learning how to get better at explaining it and teaching it. And I think, so that applies too. Like, my goal is to get better at that aspect that I'm not good at.
Right.
Because that's ultimately going to make me a better coach.
Right. And I feel very, very strong about that as well. So my next, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Well, I was just going to say, it's comfortable to focus on what you're good at.
Absolutely. And that's what lifters do a lot of times too.
Right.
I'm a great squatter. I'm going to squat. I'm a terrible deadlifter. Oh, I don't want to deadlift. It's like, gosh, guys, let's work our weaknesses and then improve our total, not our squat, not our bench, or not our deadlift, one specific. You know, let's improve our total, because that's what matters, is improving your total.
Yep. And I think, I mean, your total as a lifter, and I think your total as a coach. Like, if you want to be a better coach. So again, this list is what we look for in coaches. I want somebody that acknowledges what they're not real good at, and I want to see them working at getting better at those things. If I don't, then they're not really concerned with getting better, and ultimately don't have my best interest, or aren't able to provide what's in my best interest, I guess.
Okay, I'm gonna hop to my next one. Josh says, have you assisted lifters before in making weight? That in itself is, in my opinion, a critical point, specifically if you're at a level or you're in between weight classes and you're trying to decide, you know, am I going to go up? Am I going to come back down? You know, and having somebody with the knowledge, the previous knowledge, and I'm not talking about one person over 20 years. I'm talking about 50 people over 30 years, you know, and helping that person, you know, get to that weight class and be as strong as they can be when they hit the platform. You can help somebody make weight, but if they walk out their squat and they're trembling like they're about to explode, their nervous system's probably whacked, and probably part of that is they're so dehydrated and they've lost so much weight. You know, there's a point of diminishing returns, and you have to know what that is with each person. So if you have worked with people and you have the ins and outs of diet, nutrition, water, all that kind of stuff, electrolytes, people, that's something that honestly people really ask the coach, has he had that experience? And did it work out for the lifter? You know, I mean, is he going to tell you yes or no? Is he going to give you some examples? You know, I've helped people make weight going to worlds, you know. I've helped people move from a different weight class and from worlds, either going up or going down, because of the opportunity for that person to place higher in a different weight class. So, you know, there are things that you need to ask and need to consider. And even if you're a starting lifter, that should be a concern, specifically, especially if you say you're weighing 186, and do you want to cut, or do you want to just lift at a light 98? I mean, you might not want to cut. You might want to just keep on building. If you're a young person, maybe that's not specifically what you're looking to do. Maybe you want to put on more size and stuff. But knowing that part of the sport is a big part of performing the way that you want to and getting the best performance at the day of the meet.
Yeah, that was not even on my radar. That's a good one though. Making weight wasn't even on my radar. It is important. It wasn't one that popped into my mind. Yeah. So my number 7 could have been that, but I put proficient with lifting cast and the scoring programs, but more specifically how to interpret and use that data that's on there. Because if you can click through the score sheet, that's great. That's only one part of it. You need to understand and know what that data means and how to use that to your advantage.
And I think you're going to see, and one of the things that's great about doing stuff like this with somebody else that's got quite a bit of experience, we're going to have different thoughts and different priorities. And what Josh just mentioned, that wasn't on my radar, but is it a good thing to do? Heck yeah, it is. I mean, there's things out there, and that's why we're doing this. And that's why Josh didn't look at mine and I didn't look at his. So we can kind of, give differing opinions and maybe even giving you more broad scope of some other things that people probably wouldn't think about that you do need to ask. So my next one would be, how many lifters are you coaching presently? Okay. Some of these internet jack-offs, they might be coaching 100 lifters. You don't know, and because they've got 1 billion followers, you give a shit, okay, that's great. But do yourself a favor. Do yourself a favor. Ask the coach how many people he's coaching. And if he comes up with some insane number like 100, what do you think those guys are getting? If he's training 100 people, and there are probably people doing that, just because they want to give that person their money to have them say, oh, that guy right there, he's my coach. He coaches this guy, this guy, this guy, and this guy. I don't give a shit. It's like, just be conscious. Is this guy training 25 people, 50 people, 100 people? I think it's something that's, going to be, in the long run, if you know that, it's going to be more helpful for your development.
So I'm going to argue against that.
Okay.
Just because I know this is how some people think. I agree. Personally, I agree with you. I'm going to say the other side of it, though. I do know there's people that hire a coach for the specific reason of getting more exposure on social media. And that's the...
Wrong idea.
Correct. But unfortunately, that's a reality. So if we're looking for... My list is based on somebody that's going to make... If I'm a lifter, I want somebody that's going to make me the best lifter. And that's what my list is based on. But there are people that, yeah, they want to do meets and have fun, but they want to be a social media superstar. And there are coaches that will help more than that, regardless of if you get to be as good of a lifter as you could be or not. Unfortunately, that's the reality. I think that's ridiculous. Like, if I'm hiring a coach, I want to become the best lifter I can be. I don't care if I have, 100,000 followers on Instagram that watch me and whatever. I don't care about that. But some people do. So if you are one of those people, we're probably not the coach for you, just to be blunt. But I just mentioned that because that is something that I've heard people say before. Like, well, I've actually had people ask me, like, what are you going to do to put me more in the spotlight? I'm like, I'm gonna make you a better lifter that places higher at meets. Well, what about social media and stuff like that? I'm like, well, I'll post stuff, but I don't have 100,000 followers and I don't really care about that. So it's really weird. It's a weird.
And see, I think this is a great thing that me and Josh are doing this together, because I'm old school and Josh is newer school. So we've got different, knowledge and different dealing with different lifters and different times and stuff like that. I don't train people like I used to, and I don't say I do, but Josh is kind of a newer school kind of guy, And he runs into things that if I'd have had somebody ask me that, I'd be like, dude, you got the wrong coach. You're going to need to go talk to somebody else because that's not what I'm about. So, all right, Josh, we're going to go to the next one.
My next one is I want a coach to be objective and honest. So
that's a good one.
Somebody that will tell you you're squatting an inch high in training. Somebody that's going to say, hey, you got a meet in 3 weeks and you went out with your buddies and stayed out till 2 a.m. drinking twice last week. If you don't care about being the best, fine, do that. But if you're here and you told me coming in you want to be the best lifter you can be, you got to knock that shit off. That's not an easy thing to say to people, but if somebody comes to me,
won't do that.
Some people won't. But if somebody comes to me and they're very clear, like they want to be the best lifter they can be, those little things are the things that you got to be disciplined enough to do. And if you're not, you're going to get caught on it. One other thing with that too is, being objective and honest. You can even put integrity in there. I believe in following the rules. So, just because you might not get caught, I don't want that. I want somebody that's going to follow the rules whether somebody's looking or not. So
one thing I will say about that too, and that's maybe in a point I'll have a little bit later about Josh, but if you're looking for a coach, and make sure that coach is affiliated or knows a lot about or has coached lifters in the federation that you want to lift in. Is somebody that's wearing triple ply equipment going to probably come and ask me and Josh a bunch of questions? Probably not, but I've dealt with, guys that have wore multiply, and I've dealt with guys that are single. I've dealt with guys that are raw, wraps, whatever. So, and I think that has something, that you should be knowing going in and ask the coach, hey, I'm going to lift in this federation. Have you coached people in this federation? And if you have, what kind of results have you gotten with the people in that federation? Not just one federation, but multiple federations. So, and that was me kind of talking about what Josh just said. But, okay, I'm on 7. It says, how long have you been coaching lifters, and do you yourself have a coach personally? I get this all the time on the internet, and it damn near makes me chuckle. It's like, okay, you need to do this, this, and this, and my coach is having me do this and this, and I just, in my mind, I'm like, okay, you've got somebody coaching you. Not that I'm saying that's the wrong thing to not get a coach that has a coach, but ask the guy how long he's been coaching. I mean, that is a sign. That's like a flag going up. I'm not saying a red flag, but it's a flag. It's like, dude, how long have you been coaching? And if the guy says, I've been coaching for 2 years and I've coached 3 people, or I've been coaching for 2 years because he's got 800 followers or 1,000 or 10,000 followers, and he's coaching 50 people. And he's been coaching for 2 years and lifting for 3. He's a freak of nature, and he's maybe got a good following because he's got a nice physique and he's decently strong. But seriously now, if the guy's got a coach, maybe you should ask him who his coach is and know what that guy has done with the lifters that he's done, and not just the guy that you're having coach you, but other people. It's just common sense to me to think about, people coming in, and asking, different things about coaches, this and that. And it's like, hey, be conscious about asking somebody, how many people have you coached and how long have you been coaching? And how long have you been lifting might be another good answer. Good question.
Yeah, and there's nothing wrong with the guy that's only been coaching for 2 years, but you got to look at it in the big perspective of it. Like, is that who you want to hire as a lifter that's been competing for 10 years that wants to get to that next level? Probably not. Maybe that that coach ends up being one of the best coaches of all time in another 20 years, maybe.
Okay, this is probably going to ding Josh a little bit, and if I had to guess, I probably think he probably doesn't have this on his list, and if he does, hey, that's great. But I really honestly think that a good coach should have, more experience than just coaching. And some of the things about being a good coach is just understanding the ins and outs of powerlifting in general, and some of that, revolves around, have you ever volunteered at a meet? Have you ever volunteered a meet? Are you an official? Have you ever spotted and loaded? Have you ever been a meet director? Do you give a damn about the sport? Are you in the sport for yourself and to try to get money out of the people that that I'm talking to, that we're talking to? Like, okay, I just want to coach and I want to do my thing. I don't give a damn about, volunteering. I don't give a damn about none of that stuff. I'm there to show up. People are there that get paid money to do what they're doing, but I want to do what I want to do. And I mean, is that the kind of person that you want as a coach? Somebody that's just in it for themselves and that's it? Or have you got people that are really been involved in the sport for a long time and have done different things besides just coach and lift, I think it would be awesome, if not anything else, to have somebody that's an official. Are you a state official, a national official? I don't care what official you are. I don't care. But at least you've got a grand scheme of things about, is that depth proper? Is the equipment that you're going to take to equipment check-in, is it legal? I mean, if you have the official end of that, you're not going to get caught with your pants down and show up with a belt that's not legal and go, holy shit, I didn't know this belt was not legal.
What? So, first question, why is that a ding on me?
I'm just saying I don't know if you'd had that on your list, Josh, to be, have volunteer.
So we're on number 5, right? I'm
Yeah.
on number 5. My next one is passion.
There you go. That encompasses it.
And my sub, I think that's funny. We didn't compare these notes. So my sub notes of that is someone that genuinely loves all aspects of powerlifting.
Oh, wow.
And
we're getting good, guys.
So somebody that's excited to be helping and coaching you, and genuinely enjoys experiencing and contributing to all different aspects of the sport. A little bit different reason for putting this on there than I think what you had. Even as a referee, even as a working the score table, spotting and loading, like if I'm doing it because I feel obligated, that's different than doing it because I genuinely love it. And I think it's pretty clear. You can see the people that genuinely love it, and that's somebody that I want some of that in my coach. Like I don't want it to be, well, time to coach Dale or Bill or whatever today. I got to get there. I want somebody that's like, hell yeah, we're about to train. Today is the day we get better.
And when you see that person improve, it gives you some pride and gives you some pleasure. And there's some people that do it just for this right here and for likes. And honestly, if I'm going to pay somebody, I want them to give a damn about me and give a damn about, are we progressing and are we both getting something out of this, because you're making me better and I'm enjoying watching you get better,
And I think there's a lot of sacrifices that, lifters and coaches have to make. I mean, I'm away from my family for a week during some of these national meets. Like, that's not an easy thing to do. And if I didn't genuinely love it, I wouldn't do that, even if, it didn't matter how much you were paying me. And let's be honest, we're not making a lot of money doing this. But it's something that, I think it's pretty obvious if you're paying attention. Like, you can see who genuinely wants to be there and loves it. And I think that's a good quality to have.
If you see your coach get excited when you make a PR, that's a good sign, folks. That's a good sign. If you celebrate together when you have a PR, or you win a national championship, or you win a state championship, if you're both excited, hey, that's an awesome thing. I would say don't judge your coach by how many followers he has on the internet. And that's just a little, thing right there. Because the guy's got 10,000 followers doesn't mean he can coach nobody, I mean, maybe he's a great lifter and he's never coached a person in his life. And then all of a sudden he's got 20, 40 people asking him to coach him, and he's never coached anybody, So just again, don't judge things on internet-based things, how many views the guy's got, or how many followers the guy's got, or a girl, or whatever. Have some substance to this. How long have you been coaching,
Yep. Yeah, I feel like we're at the point now. I'm probably not going to disagree with our top fives, but I'm going to try to just for sake of argument. But so my number 4 is understanding of biomechanics and exercise science and things like that. So I think there's a lot of people that it's monkey see, monkey do. I see somebody doing 5 sets of 5 pause squats, and they see that lifter get stronger. Oh, I want to have my lifters do that. And I think there's nothing wrong with trying to understand why they're doing that, and maybe that is what your lifter needs to do. But I think you need to understand the whys, like what kind of response lifters are going to get from different programming, different techniques, and biomechanics of it too, being, okay, if my lifter, moves his feet a half inch wider on a squat, is that going to help, hurt? Is that going to fix a problem we have? Is that, there's so many things that go into how we select somebody's technique. But even further, like once we kind of have mechanically what looks efficient and what is efficient, well, first of all, understanding what, I guess the physics and what an efficient motion is. But then on top of that, like understanding how to program to develop that technique specifically, because there are very different ways to program for different techniques.
And one of the things that I want to bring up, and Josh, sometimes he'll mention something that is incredibly important, and I just feel like that some people, is almost like Josh said, monkey see, monkey do, but it's to a point of, okay, man, I'm going to do the Bulgarian squat program. I'm going to squat twice a day, 6 days a week. Okay, when are you going to deadlift? I mean, is your squat your best lift? If your squat's your best lift, maybe you don't have to squat 6 days a week, twice a day. Maybe you need to start deadlifting a little bit more because your squat is your better lift. And there's so many people that go back asswards about stuff and work their good lifts because that's what's fun. And people will tell you, what's your favorite lift? It's probably the one that you're the best at. I love benching. Well, that guy's probably a better bencher than he is a squatter and a deadlifter. So, kind of grasp that there are people out there that have these little, partial little things from this guy and that guy, Chico, Bulgarian, this or that. Now, and let me explain something to you too, guys. And if you don't know this, please watch a couple of videos of somebody that has actually done the Bulgarian squat program. That's a coach. Do that. Help yourself, because there's videos out there on YouTube that'll show you that, and these guys that do that kind of stuff back in the day, and when they were doing this Bulgarian stuff back in the 80s and 90s and early 2000s, those guys were drugged out of their minds. And if somebody doesn't tell you that it's saying, okay, let's try this Bulgarian squat program. It's awesome. Well, maybe you ought to first start by taking, 1,000 milligrams of testosterone a week because you're going to die if you don't. But if you don't want to do that, maybe you shouldn't do the Bulgarian squat program. I kind of got on a rant.
No.
Okay, here's my number 4. My number 4. So, let's see. Have you ever, I think it'd be a good thing to ask the coach, have you ever coached a novice lifter or a beginner lifter, or maybe even somebody that never power lifted before, to a national level? In the fact of, you took somebody, a young person, or even a little bit older person, have you ever taken a novice lifter and coached them from the beginning, maybe to the point that they never deadlifted before? Because I've coached many people, when they come in the gym the first time, they have not deadlifted. They're at the freaking high school doing power cleans, and they've never done a Romanian. That's how bad some of these high school programs are, and strength condition is ridiculous, and they've never done any abs in their whole damn life. But ask the coach, have you ever coached a beginner or somebody that maybe not even ever competed in powerlifting? You started them, took them their first meet, and you took that person all the way to a national championship or at least to a national level, placing in the top 2 or 3, or maybe even to a world level and win a world championship. But I really think that some of the things that you really know, especially it seems like people are looking for coaches. It seems like everybody in the world wants a coach now, or they think that that's what they need to do or have to do, which, hey, that's a good place to start, especially if you're a novice and you can find somebody local that can kind of eyeball you while you're doing it, correct your form, get you going in a direction, and do some simplistic exercises, box squats, do some Romanians, do something to strengthen your core before you start throwing up a bunch of weight and then hurt yourself. Josh?
Yeah, I don't disagree with any of that. My number 3 is communication. I think there's a lot of things nowadays that are to our advantage. We kind of talked about it a little bit earlier. I mean, you have Zoom, you have all these things, like the ability to communicate and show proper technique, even with people not in person, is there. However, you still have to be able to effectively do that. And I think that's where a lot of people kind of get caught up. Like, as an example, I went to school for exercise science. I came out of college, not a great coach because I had all these on paper things in my head, but that's all fine and good if I can communicate them and teach and have somebody understand what I want them to do and why I want them to do it. And, even the finer details of it, like, okay, when you're feeling this way, you need to pivot and maybe back off. And even just the open dialogue, like, if my lifter is afraid to tell me that they twisted their knee playing basketball, doc, then so they're afraid to tell me, so they train anyway and further hurt themselves because I didn't establish that I need to have that communication. So that's one aspect of it. The other is, in a competition or even in training, I have some people that, they want me to scream, get them all hyped up, ready to go. Other people, like, they're already nervous and kind of high anxiety being at a competition. They need you just to talk to them very calm, and your calm body language actually helps them perform better. So I think that's a big, and a coach doesn't necessarily have to be able to do all of those different aspects, but I think it's important to look for a coach that communicates the way that is comfortable for you as a lifter.
I do want to comment on something that Josh said a little bit earlier that I think is very, very, very critical, and I'm hoping I word this right. He was talking about, and I think some of the things we kind of go back just a minute or so ago, talking about somebody that maybe is not performing like they should be on the program that you wrote for the person. Well, is the coach going to say, hey, what the hell's wrong with you? You should be able to do this. Or should he ask you, hey, man, is there anything going on in your life? Have you, how's your sleep been? Did you just lose your, you could have just lost your job. Your dog should have just got run over. Your grandparent might have just passed away. There's endless things. Your diet could be off. So, if your coach is just so, well, the program's what it is. If you can't do the program, I don't know what to tell you. If that's the answer that you're getting, and he's not asking you specific out of powerlifting context questions, like life questions and stuff like that, really think about, is this the right coach for you? Really, really, you need to process that a little bit and know that there are extenuating circumstances for people, even to the fact that, oh man, I wasn't able to get my third meal in of the day before I went to the gym, and I was starving when I got there, and my workout just sucked. Is he going to ask you, did something off happen that caused your workout not to be good? Or is he just going to be like, well, man, you just need to trust the process, and you need to do this, and you need to do that. And if you're not willing to do what I'm telling you to do, I don't know what to tell you, And there's a lot of good coaches out there. They're not going to be like that. Seriously, there's intelligent men out there and women that know that they need to ask the guy some simple questions like, Okay, dude, how much did you sleep last night? Or how much have you slept this week? You know, just easy things like that is just logic to me.
Yeah, and I want to stick to that a little bit more. So, like, I think that is probably one of my biggest weaknesses as a coach is the communication. I think that's something I'm very much working on. But just as an example, kind of going back to the always willing to learn thing, I mean, I hate to say this, but there's still certain situations or communication breakdowns with lifters I coach currently that happen because of me not being thorough enough in a certain aspect. And I think, that is something that is not comfortable for me to admit, but if I want to get better as a coach, like I have to own it and get better at it. And I'll even give an example. I had, somebody's going to know I'm talking about them. I had a lifter that, we were getting ready for a meet. We're probably 6 weeks out, and I kind of told him, I want you to weigh this at this, at this certain time, weigh this at this certain time. And one reason or another, they were about 2 pounds heavier than I wanted them to be about 6 weeks out. So again, not that big of a deal, right? But they thought it was a really big deal, so they didn't eat. For 3 days, they didn't eat. They basically just fasted for 3 days so that they could get to the right weight 6 weeks out that I wanted them to be. And their training went to shit, and so then I started asking the questions. I'm like, okay, well, the training really kind of didn't do well here the last couple of days. Like, so have you been sleeping? Where's your weight? Okay, weight's where I wanted it to be. Round table, 20-minute discussion, we find out you haven't eaten in 3 days. Like, oh man. Like, so again, that comes back to, like, to me, that was almost common sense. Like, that's not a great idea. But working with a newer lifter that doesn't know that was my job to communicate the bigger picture stuff, and I didn't do that. So, I think there's always little curveballs that are going to come up, and it's how you respond and learn from it. And like I'm very aware, like when I give somebody little kind of not deadlines, but like little targets to hit. Like, these are targets. Like, it's not get there by any means necessary. And if you're not there, let me know that, and we can, work together on the plan of, where we're at now and how we're going to get to the next step. And I think sometimes I'm going to add a little bit to my communication, being approachable. And some of that was, I had lifters say that they didn't think that they didn't think I would approve, or they didn't want to bother me with that because they thought that, for whatever reason. And I think that is something that I'm trying to be aware of too, is like, if I come off as like, I don't, that's your shit to deal with, I don't want to, don't waste my time with that. Okay, that puts a lifter in a little bubble by themselves trying to figure shit out. And, and this is coming up for me because this has happened to me, and it should have never happened. But, obviously hindsight's 20/20. I can either ignore it and be like, oh, that was just a fluke, or I can be like, okay, this is a big flaw in how I communicate with my lifters. I need to address it. And circling back, why that's important is, like, I think when you're looking for a coach, like, you need to, try to find somebody that can communicate how you like to communicate, but also somebody that's going to be willing to, adjust and learn with you, I guess, in how you communicate, because you're never going to 100% match up exactly right on how you communicate with somebody. There's always a little, either just misunderstanding, or you're not exactly in sync, and being able to be willing to figure that out together and have the dialogue, I think, is important. And that, this is not just the powerlifting coach. I mean, this can just be anything, but I think it's something that a lot of lifters and a lot of coaches just kind of take for granted, and it kind of bites them sometimes.
And honestly, what Josh kind of had with the 2 pounds and all that kind of stuff actually leads into my next number 3. Actually, it's like, have you ever done a nutrition plan diet for a lifter and their supplements? Okay, guys, if you've got a coach And I mean, he can coach you as good as anybody. But if he doesn't have a little bit of nutrition knowledge, goodness gracious, you need to find either a nutrition person to help you as well, or you need to find a coach that does both. And then sometimes that doesn't happen, but if you're lucky enough to have that, and know how different things, be it your supplements, if it's creatine or, a million other things, how much protein, how much fat, how much carbs, this. And even to the point of the guys that are taking, performance enhancing drugs and stuff like that, and what that does to your body. Does it make you retain water? Does it not? Are you dehydrated? You just got to know these different things. And it's like, okay, if I've got a lifter that's, going to make 148 and he's 155 and he's taking, 10 plus grams of creatine a day, or milligrams, whatever, and he's having a hard time getting his weight off, it's like, okay, maybe we ought to look at your supplements a little bit and see if you're not taking something that's making you just hold every drop of water that you possibly can, So, and it's just something that you need to know. And there's coaches out there that do know that. And there's other coaches, and it's like I'm saying too, it's like what federation you're in, if you want to go to the WPO and you're taking everything known to man, Trin and Cypionate and Anadrol and Dynabol and all that kind of stuff, and you're just bloated out the ass because you're doing all that shit, you better have somebody that's got some experience to kind of help you if you need to make weight and give you an advice on that stuff. But nutrition is so critical about your performance, and then you've got so many different ideas nowadays, let's do this long fast. Let's only eat twice a day. Let's eat 5 times a day. Let's do this. Let's do that. Okay, no carb days, macros, da. You can go, so many different directions with that stuff. And you have to kind of know too, the person's body, is he got 10% body fat and you're trying to take off 5 pounds, or is he 20% body fat and you're trying to take off 5 pounds? It's a big different whole schmeal if you got one or the other. So really kind of know, is that coach got some kind of knowledge on nutrition and supplements, that whatever federation that you're going to be working in, that he has that knowledge to be able to help you out. Josh, you got anything on that?
Yeah, I kind of take the opposite stance there. Okay. I think that is super critically important, to the point that I actually feel, and I'm talking to myself about myself specifically, I have a pretty good understanding of basic nutrition, but if I have a lifter that comes to me and says they want to be the best, I'm not equipped on the nutrition side to be at that elite level with the nutrition. So I'm going to refer them to somebody else for the nutrition side. Now, I disagree and I don't disagree, I guess, because I think a coach has to have a basic understanding.
And some people don't even have that.
Right. And, I can write somebody a basic, nutrition plan, tell them how much of this, what kind of supplements, all that stuff. But that is still probably better than most people are doing. But when somebody says that they want to do everything possible to be the absolute best, so I guess to add to that, I want a coach that's honest about that. So, if somebody comes to me and says that, and says like, do you include, and this is a question that everybody brings up, they ask, do you include nutrition plans?
I think that's a great question. Great question.
It's a great question. And I think the answer, whether it's yes or no, what follows that answer is telling. So my answer is no, I do not. I can look at, what you're doing and give you general recommendations and probably clean up a lot of what you're doing. But if your goal is to be as dialed in with every single detail of being the best powerlifter possible, then you need a very detailed, very specific, very thorough nutrition plan, just like you do training program, just like you need recovery plan, all of those things. And I'm gonna refer you to somebody that is an expert in that specific field, and we're gonna collaborate on your overall programming.
And guys too, to realize this, and Josh has really just kind of brought some stuff to light there. You don't have to pay somebody for every little thing that you need with so much information that's on the internet. Goodness gracious alive. There's people that are just so far in the stratosphere about nutrition and stuff like that. And you go to YouTube, I mean, one of the guys, just to give you just a little taste, just go watch Stan Efferding, and his vertical diet. I mean, it's just well thought out. And I'm not saying that's what everybody needs to do, because that's not what everybody needs to do. But this guy was a bodybuilder. He was a power lifter. He knows the ins and outs about what macros do for you and what certain foods do for you and what it doesn't do for you and what makes you retain water and what gives you gas. And there's just a whole bunch of stuff in there. And you can watch some of his videos. I mean, they're an hour, 2 hours long. If you got a couple hours, you might save you a few $100 or a few $1,000, But I would just kind of throw that out to you, that nutrition is not as hard to find as a powerlifting coach. It is not, because it's just something that's been around for generations, where powerlifting hadn't been here for 200 years, So that's just one thing I would like to add. You got something, Josh?
Is it me?
You go ahead, man.
So my number 2, and this might be almost like a summary of a few points I already made, so I'm not sure. So
I think that's going to happen with both of us, but I think honestly that's going to happen.
So my number 2 is, I don't even know how to title it, but somebody that has experience and knowledge. Example, somebody that has experience as a coach, meaning they've done it for a while, they've had success. Somebody that's been a lifter that has had firsthand knowledge of what and this is something I use as a coach too, is like, what do I want from my coach or my handler, whatever it is, as the lifter? And I try to anticipate, especially at a meet, like, somebody's, putting their wrist wraps on and they're about to stand up to get ready to go, do a squat, and their belt's not on. Okay, I'm not asking, or I'm not just waiting for them to realize they don't have their belt. I'm looking for their belt, grabbing it and handing it to them before they even realize they don't have it. And I think it's that experience that, whether it's, your experience coaching, whether it's as a lifter, whatever it is, like, those are some of those little scenarios that an experienced person, however they got that experience, coaching, lifting, whatever, they're going to start recognizing those little things, and that is huge. So that's one aspect. This could be like 5 different points probably.
It's crazy how similar his is to mine for this number. I mean, it's almost identical.
So I put experience, there. I also put certifications, degrees, because I think there is a place for, book smart, right? Like we want to learn, but the big thing is being able to apply what you learn. So, I think that's important. I think there's a lot of great coaches that don't have any degree in exercise science. They don't have any certifications. That's fine. I don't have a problem with that. If you can coach, you can coach. I think there's a lot of people that want to become a coach that don't start out with that experience. And I think going this direction of getting that book smart and then being inserted into the practical of it, of being around the lifting, you can connect some of the dots a lot quicker. So, the certification and degrees by themselves, I don't think, to be blunt, don't mean anything by themselves. But I think it gives you a big resource to pull from once you start kind of getting more hands-on and into the actual, thick of it, I guess.
Well, let me break in there just for a second, Josh. I know that Josh came from Ashland, and I know some of the people he was involved with up there, and I think they got a throwing coach up there. What's his name, Josh, and the track guy?
Judd Logan. He just passed away a little over a year ago.
Okay, man, that's awful. But that's an intricate part of kind of what Josh might be saying too, in the involvement of where your school is and who's available to you. And because Josh was available with Judd, right, Josh?
Yeah.
That I'm sure that was invaluable to him, just to be around that guy and have firsthand knowledge of watching somebody coach.
Yep. And so this is actually really good, really funny. So my advisor in college, he was the chair of the sports sciences department. He's the one that actually kind of did my programming and some of that. And he was one of those guys that was like crazy book smart. And he basically, like, him and I would talk all the time and kind of go over like the whys and the science of everything. But if he were to come into the gym and try to explain that to any lifters in here, they would just be like, what the hell is this guy talking about? And then I also work with Judd, who is like the complete opposite, who, you know, it's just like in the moment, just like super amped up, like somebody's getting ready to squat, the entire team's like clapping, making noise, and it's just like the atmosphere is crazy. And I think what really helped me was seeing both extremes and understanding the importance of both extremes, because, you know, there for a short period of time, like, so I started with Judd, where it was just like, you know, balls to the wall, like you're excited to be there. And, you know, that was great. That was fun. But I didn't understand why I was doing anything I was doing. I was just doing what he was telling me to do. And I was getting stronger. Yep. And then I started working with Dr. Fincher when I started kind of officially got into the exercise science program and everything. And we started, you know, talking about why we do this, why we do that. And I started drawing connections like, okay, Judd had me doing this. I have no idea why, whatever, but based on some of the stuff Dr. Fincher's teaching me, okay, this makes sense. So Judd had however he got the information. I know he worked with Louis a lot, Louis Simmons. However he got his knowledge, he got it through trial and error, I think, versus through a textbook. But the interesting part is, like, those two are so similar, you know, and I learned some stuff from Judd I didn't learn in the classroom, right? And I learned a lot of stuff from Dr. Fincher that I didn't learn, like, in the gym. And being able to pull from both of those and see how it all connects, I think, has really been helpful. But especially, like, and this has helped me with my communication, I think, a lot, because, you know, in school we use all the official terms, we use all these things, and if I were to, you know, come into the gym and say, your glute minor is probably a little bit blah blah blah, and just start using all these terms, like, people are like, just tell me what the fuck I'm supposed to do. Like, you know what I mean?
And one of the things that Josh is saying right here, coaches, understand, you have to dumb it down. That's what Josh is pretty much saying. Just dumb it down to where somebody doesn't have to be an exercise science major to understand what the F you're talking about.
And that's the funny part for me, is, like, I thought Judd was just a meathead that just go, because he didn't talk about anything, no big words. It's just like, do this, and he would even say why. He's like, because we're trying to do this, but he didn't go into the nervous system, blah, 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 blah. But when I started learning in the classroom, like, that's when I realized, like, okay, Judd knows all that stuff. He's just talking to you, like, in gym bro terms, because that's what gym bros understand.
And I guarantee you, some of the reason that this happened, what Josh is talking about, Judd, he was dealing with athletes that weren't exercise science majors. So he was having to coach that way to enable the people that he's trying to get stronger to get to their level and teach them what they need to do. And he doesn't have to go the intricacies of, this muscle or this attachment or this tendon or this or that, and how you need to put things together and stack or whatever, anything like that. He's just going to put it out there, and hopefully you believe enough in him that you're going to do what he says and you're going to get strong as F. That's pretty much it, right,
yeah,
Josh?
Yeah, and I think, why I have that kind of, again, a hodgepodge of stuff at my number 2 is because there are lifters that they don't care about the why. They just want to know what to do, and they're going to give you 100% and do it. Great. There's other lifters that they're very analytical. They, for whatever reason, that's how their mind works. So that's how they get motivated. They need to know the whys. They need to know the details. And having that exercise science background or some of those more book smart things, sometimes that is what helps certain people because that's how they think. And, being able to draw from either side or somewhere in the middle, I think is important.
I think you were blessed having both of those there together. That probably was very helpful.
Yeah.
And if you want to kind of it's so crazy because I said it just kind of in a different way than what Josh said it. But, mine was, how long have you been involved in powerlifting? And have you handled lifters at meets? And that in itself is, if you're got a coach, okay, maybe he's done some powerlifting himself. Maybe, he's been coaching for, 2 years. But has he ever been to an event and handled somebody from weigh-ins to warming up at the right time, to picking attempts, to knowing if this person's on or off compared to what they've seen in the gym? And Josh has seen me do this, and I don't know how many times that I've had people ask me this, but when I go to a meet, I write on my hand, TODAY, today. That's what I write on my hand. And the reason I write that on my hand and see it every time that I look at my hand, or if I grab a pair of wraps or grab a belt or anything like that, I'm trying to rationalize what I'm seeing right then, right there, and not be basing what I think the person should have done on a video that the guy had 3 weeks ago, a squat video, that, okay, hypothetically, the guy weighed 208 and hit a triple with 600 and it was easy. And now he's 198 and we're warming up and it just doesn't look the way I think it should look. Today. And if you've got a coach that can't do that, you're in trouble, And that being said, that takes years of coaching to understand all those aspects. Or it takes a very smart individual that's a very good lifter that started maybe at not such a great level, but worked up into a very high level, maybe not a world champion, but has the benefits of 10, 15 years of lifting, 10 years of coaching. It's going to be that guy that's going to see all the stuff that's going on at the meet. And that's the most important thing. What happens at the meet? What happens at the meet? It's not what happened at the gym. You're trying to perform your best the day of the competition. And I just feel like some of the things that Josh brought up about just seeing things. Well, if you've watched 100,000 squats in the last 10 years, you've probably seen all kinds of people at all kinds of levels, at all kinds of competitions, either do real well, do pretty good, do bad, and try to figure out how to improve yourself to enable that person to do better next time. Even if they broke personal records, the next time we're trying to do the same thing. We're trying to hit personal records. If the guy's a novice, intermediate or advanced, you just need to try to work, and experience is something that's so invaluable that people don't think about. Guys, please ask the coach, how much experience have you had? How many lifters have you handled at meets? Have you handled multiple lifters at meets? Because if the guy goes and he's there just for you, hey, that's fine and good. But if he's there for 5 other people and he's never done 5 people before, you might be in trouble. So think about the little things that you're probably not thinking about because maybe you haven't gotten there yet. But that guy's knowledge and his experience is something that is, you could pay somebody a lot of money and them have a little bit of experience, and what are you going to get? You're going to get a little bit of experience and a little bit of knowledge. So, and I'm not saying that the guy needs to be Methuselah and, been powerlifting for 100 years. Try to wrap your mind around and get away from some of the internet stuff and realize that there are people out there that have done this for a long time, and finding those people to be able to help you is going to be critical. Josh, anything you want to say about?
Yeah, I think we're pretty close on our number ones. I think, yeah.
And was that your number one?
No, go ahead.
Okay.
So,
no, go ahead.
Okay. So my number one is a little on those same lines. Okay. It's somebody that has a proven track record of success, and I break that down into somebody that has developed lifters. You mentioned that earlier. Somebody I don't care if you take somebody that's, has a 100 kilo total and get them to a 200 kilo total. That's still developed a lifter. If you've taken a, multi-time national champion, started coaching them and got them even further, like that's developing a lifter. What I don't like seeing is you working with a lifter, regardless of what level they're at, and they're basically just staying the same. Another big aspect for me is injuries. Is a coach always getting his lifters hurt?
That's a real good one. Yep.
If so, that's a big red. I mean, you said flag earlier. That's a red flag because something is not adding up. I mean, injuries happen. Like fluke things happen. So like if a lifter gets hurt, that's not a big deal. I mean, it's a big deal, but that's not a red flag. But when, okay, this lifter's been working with this coach for 4 years and they got hurt. This lifter, about the 3 to 4 year time with that coach, got hurt. Okay, that's a problem. And I don't know how many people look at that when they're picking a coach, but that is to me important because that tells me that they're doing a lot of things. They're doing too much work, probably lifting too heavy too often. It could be trying to cut too much weight. It could be lack of nutrition. The laundry list goes on. Like there's so many things that can contribute to that, and if you are not able to recognize that there's an issue there, then that's a problem. So, and even, I'll take that back, not take it back, but I always put it this way. Let's use a scale of 0 to 100. Let's say 100 is like the best lifter of all time. 0 is like a complete beginner. If I take somebody from 0 to 70 in 2 years and then they get hurt, okay, that was really great progress for 2 years, but they're done now. Or you got somebody that got from 0 to 60 in 4 years and 0 to 90 in 8 years. Okay, who would you rather be? The person that got to 90 in 8 years or the person that got to 70 and their career's done in 2 years? And, that answer might be different for certain people. Some people might say, I want to get to 70 right now. I don't care about the future. That's not my strategy. That's not how I look at it. And I'll be point blank with people. I've had people say like, hey, I want to be a national champion in 2 years. Okay, there's some things developmentally that we're not going to be able to do for long-term health and success that we're going to have to kind of bypass if that's your only goal, and that doesn't align with how I look at it. So that would not be a good fit for me as a coach. And there are people that I've talked to that I've basically said, no, I can't work with you because I'm just not comfortable with that. And other coaches, they'll bring you in the system, get you there to 70. Again, this is an arbitrary scale. Mm-hmm. You met your goal, you get hurt, and sometimes they don't. Right? It's not a guarantee they're going to get hurt. But when there's a history of that happening, okay, that's not how I like to operate. I'd rather powerlifting and progression in powerlifting takes time to do it right. You can get strong real quick, but there are side effects to that. Yeah. And the lifters that are that 90 to 100 on that scale of 0 to 100, they aren't flash in the pans. They've been doing it for a while and they've developed and they've done it the right way to get there. And I think everybody wants to get there right now. Nobody wants to look at that overall longevity and realize that it's going to take some years of hard work and smart work to get there. I kind of got on a little side rant there.
Oh, that's all good.
I have a few other. So my number one is kind of like all. So track record. So the overall theme is proven track record of success. So I talked about developing lifters, and again that was circling back like short burst of getting strong and then hurt, or getting beyond what that person that would have got hurt, whatever. Another aspect is
So Josh has got 10 in his number one.
yeah, they're all under the theme of proven track record, I guess. So proven track record of attempt selection, and that's a little bit of a trigger word for me because I think people get caught up in going 9 for 9. That seems to be a trend, which I'm not against going 9 for 9. I'm not against going 9 for 9. I am against not putting your athletes in the best position to place or win or whatever it is. So,
and the perfect example of that, what Josh may be speaking about, first place is already sealed up. Your guy's got second place sealed up. His third place is sealed up. You come to his last deadlift, and he's really chomping at the bit to deadlift 600. He's never done it. And it ain't going to matter if he makes it or not. Right. It's not going to matter if he makes it or not. Put 600 on the frickin' bar.
So why it doesn't matter?
If you think he's got a chance to do it.
Well, why it doesn't? So when we say it doesn't matter, because this is what people overlook, and this is, again, what the sport of powerlifting is. It's a competition. I think people get so caught up in hitting this number, hitting that number, or whatever, or making 9 attempts. To me, it's a sport and it's a competition. And if you have secured second place, you can't get worse than second. You potentially could swing for the fences and try to get first, but if that's out of your realm, then okay, now we look at hitting a PR. And like you said, if you miss it, you still got second. So why would you not give that lifter the opportunity at that point to...
Because he's going to be probably happier leaving the meet attempting that weight. And if you gave him 589 and he could probably pull 600 in his mind, he ain't going to be happy.
Yeah, and what you learn from that, here's the part people miss out on, I think, is you, as a coach, I learn a hell of a lot from what I can expect from my lifter when I put them in that situation. Hey, you know what?
Is he going to nut up?
Second is secured. 600, we're putting it on. That's the number you wanted. It's on the bar. What are you going to do? And even if they miss it, if I know they brought their best effort, okay, I know when I tell them the situation that's going to be helpful in the future. If I say, okay, 600's on the bar, and they look at me like a deer in the headlights, like, oh shit, I didn't think I was actually going to get an opportunity. Okay, I know in the future that telling them what's on so it's always, again, as a coach, you're always learning. Yep. So even though I would still make that call, next time I'm not telling him that's on the bar because he panics or, whatever. And, it's all situational awareness. Everybody's different. And the more times you can be put into those situations, the more you can learn what your lifter and how they're going to respond. So again, if we go the safe route, let's say they just pulled 570 and 600 is what they wanted to go for. That's a pretty big jump, but if 570 moved good, okay, we'll put it on. But if we go conservative and go 580, whatever, they pull it pretty solid, I haven't really learned anything from them. I don't know if they're going to be a gamer or if they're going to fold under the pressure.
That's true.
I have not learned anything.
That's true.
So in those situations where the outcome of the meet doesn't matter, I want to learn something from my lifter. And I will put it on whatever it is that, is kind of their milestone or maybe it's a total. That's the other thing people don't look at. Maybe they want to go for a 600-pound deadlift PR. Well, maybe if they pull 590, that's a 10-kilo total PR. Okay? I'm telling you, lifters probably aren't thinking about the total PR, but at the end of the day, they're probably more happy with that total PR.
Oh, and if they're not in the sport for the right reason.
Yeah, or they don't understand, I guess.
That's true.
Yes. So again, I want to circle back. Like, I'm not against going 9 for 9, because if you say like, oh, I want my lifter to miss a lift, that's not. No. That's stupid. We never go into it to miss a lift, but. I don't even know how we got here, but
I want to add to that too, Josh.
We can't be afraid to go for it. And when it's, and there's a risk reward, right? Going back to what Sherman said, if second is locked in, there is no risk. Like there's no potential loss there if we miss. Yep. Now, if we miss and we're going to end up potentially in fifth instead of second, okay, now, again, that goes back to whatever number I mentioned, is understanding the score sheet and knowing situations and what those numbers are going to do for you.
I'm going to add something to what Josh said right here, and he's probably going to say, yep, that's right too. There's lots of times that you'll have a lifter that's overconfident. Better that than the other, but he thinks that he can lift whatever you put on the bar. And there's times and situations where if we come up with a situation like this again, in your mind, you think it's going to be 50-50 or maybe not even 50-50. But he's wanting it so bad, and it's going to be a learning thing for him to realize, hey, maybe you're not as strong as you think you are, and we need to work a little bit harder to get as strong as you think you are. So if he's looking, hey, I want 600, and you're like, well, dude, we got second locked up, let's build your total a little bit. I want 600.
On number 6, of being objective and honest.
And it's just like, dude, give it to him. Let him go out there, bust a nut, not make it, miss it by 2 inches. You didn't think he was going to get it. You might even know he was going to get it above his knees and it was going to stop. It's like, okay, we know what we need to work on now, buddy. You're close, but we need to do some work. And that can be a learning thing right there too. One of the things that Josh says, and I'm going to kind of just say my philosophy has always been this, and this 9 for 9 bullshit, whatever, I don't give a damn. I want to win. That's my thing. I want to win. 9 for 9, we get 9 for 9 and we win. Hey, that's awesome. If we go 7 for 9 and we win, I don't give a shit. We won. I'm going to win. My priorities as a coach, when I go to a meet, your opener should be easy. If something is not perfect, that opener, you should still be able to make it. Maybe you had to put a little bit more effort into it than you really should have. Maybe when you walked out with it, you didn't get your feet just right. Maybe you had to take more steps in your walkout. Maybe somebody gave you a shitty liftoff. There's so many things that can happen that you have to open your eyes and say, okay, I know what I saw, but I know what happened. So we can still go up and keep on the plan, or okay, that happened. We're not staying on the plan. We've got to back that plan down because today's not the day. But my biggest thing is your openers ought to be easy. And then after you get to openers, you place as high as possible. That's the next most important thing. Your placing is the next most important thing. And then when you get the highest placing that you possibly can, the next thing is PRs. And the next thing is if you're in that level, is breaking records. So openers, that's the priority one. You got to get your openers in, no matter just about what. And there's going to be occasion where something funky is going to go down, and knowing and seeing what you're going to see. Are you the coach that's going to sit there and go, okay, man, I know that, that was the worst liftoff I've ever seen in my life, and it took you, 5 seconds to get the bar under control before you started your descent. We're going to take that opener again. And that guy hit it for a triple in the gym 3 weeks ago. Okay, instead of jumping 10 kilos, let's jump 2.5 or 5, But it's just, staying aggressive. But the biggest thing is placing as high as you can. And then it's PRs, and then it's records. That's always been the way I always coached. Josh, we got one more, I think.
Yeah. But that was my number one.
That was your number one? Okay.
So I'm going to add on to that too.
Okay.
So I agree with that. I would add one more thing in there is, I don't know what the term would be, situational total awareness. If you're on the verge of qualifying for nationals or something like that, that would be thrown in there after openers.
Absolutely. If you're at that level.
Right. Yeah. Not everybody
wouldn't be at that level, but that is very much a great point if you're at that level.
Right. And if you're not, and if that's, I don't have anything else.
Okay. and my number one, and it's just really, really like maybe people will look at this and say, well, no shit, you ought to do that. But sometimes the most simple thing is the most important thing. And I have seen this in the past and stuff like that. There's guys that go to the gym and they're strong guys, but they've never powerlifted before. And then there's guys coming up to you, man, can you help me out? I'm trying to go to a meet. And that guy's never been to a powerlifting meet in his life, Maybe that's all you can do. Maybe that's the only option that you have. But I mean, before I did that, I'd go on the internet and start looking for somebody that had the same stature as I have, built like I am, and see what that guy does in his training. That's probably what I would do before I ask, Jim Bro, what he thinks I should do. But, people are, in the infancy of becoming a powerlifter, I would just make sure that the coach that I picked had some kind of career in powerlifting, not that he's been to 2 meets, and he's got all this vast knowledge and stuff like that. You want somebody that's been a power lifter, somebody that's competed, for years. And I'm not talking about, 25 years, because you're going to limit your coaches. But, you want to have somebody that's got some knowledge about what's going to happen at a meet so he can prepare you for that. There's tons and tons of variables that people don't think about. What equipment is allowed in the federation that you're going to be lifting in? It's going to be different from federation to federation. If you're thinking about going to, you lifted in this one federation and you think the next federation you're going to that's a meet locally to you, it's got all the same rules, maybe not. Maybe you need to make sure that the coach that you've got has lifted in some different federations or coached in different federations, but specifically had the point of, knowing how meets run and knowing how long it takes you to warm up and stuff like that. And then Josh mentioned something a little while ago about somebody not eating for 3 days. The first powerlifting meet that I ever went to, it was back in 1983 or something like that. And I didn't know what the hell I was doing. I had a good guy showing me the training and stuff like that, but it was the week after Thanksgiving. Now, that's a shitty time, buddy. I went home at 198, and I was going to lift 198. And when I came back to school, I was 205. I was like, holy shit. Now, should it have been a big deal for me to lose that weight that I gained in a week and lose it back in a week? Not really. But, dude, I did the same thing that Josh was saying his lifter did because I didn't know. I didn't eat for like 3 days. And then when I got to my opener on my bench, I damn near bombed out because I was 195. I went from 205 to 195. So I lost 10 pounds and it was just like, oh shit, So just having people that have experience with stuff like that, they've had their own experience. They're a power lifter. They're a power lifter. They're a power lifter. They're going to have knowledge about what you are doing, when you get there, and him having you best prepared to be able to perform and know the ins and outs about, okay, guy, we've got all these things that we need to focus on, and sometimes it's a level of the lifter that you need to look at. If it's a novice lifter, he ain't going to have to be, just made aware of every little bitty thing because somebody is damn near, if they're at a world level and they're lifting at 100% or 98 or 105 or something like that of what they've ever done before, the smallest little thing can throw somebody off, Okay, if you've had somebody and you're going to a Raw Classic meet and that dude's never wrapped anybody's knees, hey guy, find somebody that has wrapped somebody's knees, okay? Don't go there and compete, and all the guy's ever done was work with people that are raw. He don't know how to wrap knees. He don't know how to roll up wraps. He don't know what a wrap roller is. There's just stuff like that that is just so critical for your benefit, for you to improve and get where you want to go. So, Josh, is there any other little things that you want to hit on? I've got one other thing I want to hit on, and that's...
So you definitely didn't have 10. You have like 15.
Honest to goodness, I have 11.
So I started,
I'm finished.
Okay.
I'm finished. So,
Right.
but I've just got, I think just one other thing.
Of course, your top 10 list is going to be better if you got 20 things on it.
Well, his number one was like 10.
Well, I got a number, one more thing on it. I didn't mention either.
You want to hit that, Josh, and I'll hit one more thing.
Yeah,
and then we'll
so-
be good.
So
The top 15. We're backing out.
yeah. So then, yeah. Again, under the topic of proven track record of success, it's, we kind of already talked about it, but being able to take the theory and apply it in reality, and I think that comes back to what you said is like having somebody that's been in the arena, like somebody that knows what. I mean, because we can sit at a table here and talk about everything that you're going to experience at a powerlifting meet, and then that lifter walks out onto the platform and is looking at 100 people in the face that are watching them, and they freak out because they weren't expecting that. So like, you can't prepare somebody for every little aspect until they've experienced it. And
you yourself has experienced it.
That's what I'm saying. And how am I going to prepare? You've never been. Let's say you've never been to a meet. I'm taking you to your first meet. How can I prepare you as best I can if I've never been to a meet and know all these little things? Like I can mention, okay, when you get out on the platform, stand there for count to 5 and just get comfortable with everybody in the crowd and know where you're going to look before you get under the bar. That's something nobody would ever think about unless you've been there and seen it happen or had it happen to you. And that could save the day for that person. Because if they go out there and miss their opening squat because they're so freaked out, they don't wait on the commands because they feel rushed because people are looking. Okay, well, you're 0 for 1 on squats. You got 2 more to go. That's not the best way to start your first meet. You want your lifters to be successful, and sometimes it's those experiences or those random things that can be invaluable for somebody that, especially when you know them going in. Like if I know you're shy and you don't like being in front of a lot of people, that's something I'm going to make you aware of. And guess what? In the gym, I'm probably going to have some of our training partners sit right in front of you and stare at you when you do a set here and there, just so you can start learning how to not pay attention to that and pick your spot to look at. I mean, that's just a small example, but that's never going to be something I think of as a coach if I haven't been in the arena.
And I think Josh kind of led me into this. It seemed like we kind of led each other, I think, and stuff. And one of the things Josh was talking about, and just the lifter and just having a good knowledge of the lifter and stuff, is, really try to practice, the way you're going to compete, And one of the things that drives me absolutely effing insane is you see guys, their squat form, hey, that looks good, or maybe it doesn't look good. And maybe he's getting all bent over like a rainbow when he's coming out of the hole. Maybe he's got things that he needs to work on. But dude, that needs to be addressed in the gym. That needs to be addressed in the gym. That needs to be addressed in the gym, not get to the meet and after the fact. But, some of the intricacies of even knowing that somebody's going to give you signals at a meet. I don't know how many lifts I've seen fail at meets because somebody squatted before they got the squat command, or somebody started down on their bench before they said start, or somebody let the bar down their deadlift before they said down. I mean, it's just so many little things like that. And it goes back to, trying to make sure that person, is aware if they don't do it every gym session, but they know what's expected of them when they get close to the meet, and start working on those little things that can really cost you. And I'll give you a perfect example of that just recently, and I'm sure most people are going to know who John Haack is. I think everybody should. He's one of the best lifters around. I think it's either his last meet or the one before, he pulls his first deadlift and he starts down with it and he gets an inch off the floor and he just lets go of the bar. Just like, like a lot of people want to do in the gym. I've seen it a million times, people not following the bar down. Well, bad habits, don't get yourself bad habits in the gym that you're doing repetitively in the gym. If you're pulling your deadlift and you're just dropping them or stuff like that, or letting go of them, or, or not following the bar down, follow the bar down. Dude, realize, why is it that in every lift but the deadlift, people think about the eccentric. They think about that part of it. It's not like you take your bench and go and just get loose and then wait for the press call and try to get tight back again and push it up. That's not what you do. And people don't realize that when you're deadlifting, you can build strength on your eccentric. You can. And people don't even think about it, and I am just baffled how people don't think about that. I really don't. And I'll give you a perfect example of that. And I'm going back a few years, maybe some of you people or a lot of the people that know powerlifting, you know, Brian Siders, one of the greatest lifters that's ever lived. You know, he told me, you know, his deadlift, you know, it was kind of stagnated, you know, around 810 or 820. And for some weird reason, you know, and it's not really weird, but some of the guys were in his training at his house. Well, his neighbor, I'm talking about not like he was in an apartment or a condo, his neighbor across the street started complaining about the noise, you know. So he had to start controlling his deadlifts where they weren't just going through the floor when he dropped it. And he said that working that eccentric in his deadlift probably bumped his deadlift another 20 kilos. 20 kilos? I'll take 20 kilos. Will you take 20 kilos and maybe think about working a little bit of that eccentric part of your deadlift? Oh, on top of that too, if you're doing a 5 set on your bench, I'll give you 2 examples. Ed Coan. I've seen Eddie lift several times. And one of the things that I noticed the first time that I ever saw him lift, he was warming up for squats. And that guy didn't wear much gear at all. So all you raw guys that think you're, you know, this and that, and you don't know about some of these geared lifters back in the day, you need to kind of do a little bit of research. And Eddie was 21 years old at 195 pounds, bookending 850 and benching over 5 at 21 years old. Tell me somebody else that's done that, folks. Tell me somebody else that's done that. And I've seen him warm up, and I've seen him lift in competition before. And the first thing I noticed when he was warming up his squat, 315 looked like 405. 405 looked like 500. 600 looked like 500. 700 looked like 400. 800 looked like 500. It was just so technical that if you videoed it, him straight ahead and not see the weights on the side of the bar, you would have not known what was on the bar. It's just perfect technique. And it's an eccentric and a concentric. And the same thing with the bench. Well, if you're deadlifting it and you're pulling it up and you just all out of control putting it back down, do you think the bar is where it's at where you started? Hell no, it's not. You know, when you put the bar down in semi-control, you know, and be tight when you're pulling a 5 set instead of just dropping it and then getting reset and dropping it and getting reset. And every time you drop it, I guarantee you, if you hadn't been doing it for 10 years, your reset's probably different 4 out of 5 times. So think about that, people. It's not super cool to drop your 300, 400, 500 pound deadlift after you pull it. There's a lot of people who have done that before you did. So understand that you can get stronger and try to understand that you want to practice the way you're going to compete, you know? So you're not going to compete and pull a deadlift and to drop it from your waist. It's not going to be good. You can do that if you want, miss the lift, you know? But just do take that with you and, you know, put it in your pipe and smoke it if you want.
Yeah, I think, you know, there's a lot of those things that, and I think you and I both would agree that we just kind of implement those without even thinking about it with some of the people we coach. So we don't say, hey, we're practicing commands for this reason. We just practice them, and that's just the natural, like, that's their instinct. And when you get to them, that's the thing. I think instinct is going to come out at a meet. And if you've done things this way, that's not exactly right by the standards in the gym, when you get to your 3rd attempt squat and you're all hyped up, your instinct comes out. And if you squat an inch high in the gym all the time, your instinct is to go to what's natural and what's normal, and that's squatting an inch high. If it's, locking out your bench and immediately going into the rack, when you get to a grinder and you're so hyped up, you're like, oh, hell yeah, I got it. And you go right into the rack because that's your instinct. You're going to miss a lift for a stupid reason. And I think.
And I've seen high-level lifters do that.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not to the point to where high-level lifters have never done that. It's just, and it's the thing, going back to John Haack just a couple of meets ago, he got one of his deadlift down, got red lights, and he's looking around like, what? And it's like, well, dude, you didn't follow the bar all the way back down. Okay, how many guys out there think they're as good a lifter as John Haack? If you do, do whatever the hell you want to do,
Yeah, but for the time being, my 300-pound deadlift, I'm ahead of John Haack because I got white lights.
So, and I'm not trying to, just, be harsh on, anybody. It's just what I'm saying at the level where he's at and as phenomenal and as exceptional a lifter that he is today, even those kind of people can have little faux pas sometimes, and it comes from your training. It came from his training.
So the point I'm getting from that is if John Haack can miss a lift for commands, how about all these new lifters that have never practiced it or never been to a meet? If I'm a betting person, I'm betting they're going to miss one on a command. And those are very simple things to fix.
And one of the things, and I've known, me and Josh have probably done this 1,000 times, when the person's, going out, goodness gracious, I've coached world champions before and I don't want to bring up a name, and I'm sure Josh knows exactly who I'm talking about, that I am coaching that guy like he's, never heard anybody say anything when he's coming up to the bar, get a breath, tight, da-da-da-da-da. And it's just something that, even to the point of lifting off, squeeze, hold it, and then when it's coming up, then hold it, it's because, that person is just, who he is, and you're trying to do everything you can do for the best performance for that person, regardless of the situation. And some people like to get coached incrementally. James Vang's like that, I can give James, 20 cues during a meet, and he's going to take it in, even to the point of poking his ass before he goes out to deadlift, just to make him think about something that he needs to think about through the lift. So there's all kinds of things and little things that you need to make sure that your lifters are aware of.
But I want to bring up something on that. So I would not do that with somebody that we have not done in training, right? So he doesn't, you don't walk up to James and be like, flex your triceps, and you've never said that to him or done that before. He's going to be like, triceps, am I not?
Hold on a minute.
The whole point is, again, going back to instinct. You're not teaching him something new on meet day. You're refreshing him of all of these things that we've practiced over and over and over.
And it's just cueing somebody.
It's just keeping it fresh in his mind. Not so that he even has to necessarily be so cerebral and thinking about it, but just so it keeps it at the front of his mind, coming back to the instinct. It's not like he's okay. I guess when you're squatting, you said, right? Or when deadlifting? Deadlifting. So when he's getting ready to deadlift, like he's not like, okay, I need to, he's not in there thinking like I need to squeeze my glutes. Like it's all happening instinctively. Those are just little refreshers. It's
just the last second before he walks out there.
It only works because you've practiced it over and over and over,
yes,
ahead of time.
And I'm thinking that Josh knows who I'm talking about though.
Dane Bricks.
Oh, maybe.
Dane Bricks, is that his name?
That might be. And God bless, there's different people that are going to do different things and at different levels. Just try to, do what you possibly can to get that guy through a meet and have a coach that's willing to do that for you. I think that's
all
it,
I got.
Josh. Yeah.
Thank you so much for listening. If you enjoyed today's episode of the Powerlifting and Power Ballads podcast, please remember to subscribe and share it with your friends.